I waited for 6 issues to do this. We got the X-Men that started it off, connecting Variant with the Marauders. We go next to the Excalibur, connecting Variant. We follow that up with X-Force, which should have been the New Mutants because that story happens before, connecting Variant. Next up would have been New Mutants, connecting Variants. And we finish off with this week's book, Fallen Angels, connecting Variants. And I hope that all made the screen because I got the camera facing the opposite direction. So let's start with the top of the book, and it's a flashback, or it's something. It's something that I'll revisit. There's a nice trick done in this comic where it gives us extra pages to read. Somewhere in the middle of the book, it's gonna make me say, let me flip back to the front to read exactly what happened with this child over here, who is... Oh, we'll get to that. I want to do it chronologically, just because that's the way that the story went. So the beginning part, it goes, peace in our time. It's not too much information. All I know at this point is that the art is good, but because this wasn't satisfying for me, I was like, yeah, this might not be... Look, they were 5 for 5. This might be the book that might be thumbs down for me. We get to here. Oh, let me shout out the writer and the artist. So Bryan Edward Hill, he did Killmonger, which was good. And then we got Szymon Kudranski, and the color artist is Frank Darmada. You know, I usually kind of skip over the artists because I'm rude. They deserve all the credit for what they did here, man. The artwork was so much better than the writing in this comic book, and that's not an insult to the writing. When we learn about Kwannon, she wants to be called Psylocke. Everybody got a new name. So Kwannon is like, that's her slave name. She doesn't want that anymore. Understood, we can call you Psylocke. I wish actually that Psylocke would have been the retired name. That way, if we ever said Psylocke, we wouldn't be thinking, okay, is it the Betsy Braddock English version? Is it the Japanese? Because if you just say Kwannon, that could only mean this one. And if you just say Betsy, that could only mean, for the most part, if we're talking Braddock, Excalibur, that could only mean her. By the way, she shows up in this comic book, and it's nothing major. It's just, hey, we need to talk. No, we don't need to talk. But because she does show up, I want to tell myself when this comic book takes place, because that's the way Chillmonger is. I think that the comic either takes place before Excalibur's big adventure and she becomes Captain Britain, or it happens after she does everything she's doing over in Camelot, and then she came over to the fireplace to talk to Psylocke. Either or, because Professor X isn't featured in Excalibur's book, so the Excalibur book to me wasn't locked in a time of pre the death of Professor X or post the death of Professor X, which it's called The Death of Professor X. They told us in the little editor's note he died in X-Force. That wasn't certain 100%. At the time of the book, all we saw was the hole through the helmet, the Cerebro helmet, and since they said it here, I can only take it as fact. Now it's not like, it is subjective whether or not, and we gotta wait till next week. Now I'm just like, I would be actually very upset if we read X-Force number 2. This won't happen. But if we read X-Force number 2, Professor X is alive. That's my vibranium forehead or some shit like that. That ruby that Sinister put on his forehead or something. I don't think that'll be the case. But again, the artwork was good. The visual storytelling was so good in this comic. There was also a nice artist trick that I always like to compliment. That epic page turn where Magneto's talking to her and he says to her, "You'll care about what I have to say next." Okay, that's the last thing he says here, and the anticipation of, I wonder what the next thing he has to say next is. Can't wait. This is interesting. I'm intrigued. Let's see what he says next. Usually it's like a full page of action, but it was just more speaking, and he's just gonna play dumb. He goes, "Hey, go ask your mom, Sinister," and then Sinister goes, "Well, go ask your dad, Magneto," and she does get what she wants. I don't really see Sinister's significance in it at this point. Later on, the significance. F that chronological stuff. I'll just talk about the ending. Sinister's the geneticist. If they can bring back this new villain who is named Apoth or Apoth. Comment section if that's like a word that actually exists and I'm pronouncing it wrong. Let me know if it's Apoth the first time I said it or Apoth the second time I said it. Please and thank you. So she's still got the powers of the dagger power right there. I needed to know that. I needed to see that. So that's good. Visual storytelling again. Shout out to Incoming. We got every single good writer writing this comic book, including the best Ewing writing at Marvel. That would be Eve. Let's go. Yeah, the fireplace with Betsy. Here, the thing with Cable and X-23. I'm not for it. I think X-23 just came off a relationship type thing with Miniature Scott. He was the real Scott, we find out after Extermination. But I think she doesn't need to be with Hellion. She don't need to be with anyone else she's dated who that might be slipping my mind. I don't want to see her like that. Let her be her own girl, man. Let X-23 be her thing. Remember that party, that team that we saw at the New Mutants when Danny and Roberta were walking and we saw Emma Frost's old team? Give me that. Let's have X-23 join that team and give them a book. Maybe after Fallen Angels is done, I think it'll be a 6-parter. I don't know what can happen after this Apoth mission with the drug. I don't think they can. There's no reason to keep this team together afterwards. So I'm anticipating a 6-part series. And if it goes to 12 or even ongoing even further than that, we'll see. But I do think this is a finite amount of issues for this comic book. X-23 talks to Psylocke and says, I don't want Cable in this. So that means she cares for him. That's how I read that. So I'm not getting what I wanted. But I did get a pretty cool mission. When they go to Japan, we figure out what this drug is. It's kind of interesting. It's what drugs do to us. Not that I take drugs, but what drugs do to us. It plays with the endorphins. It enhances something in here, releases the chemical stuff. It's that. It's technology though, so you don't get the harmful things. It's still harmful, but you don't get the physical toxins inside of you. It's just this thing that turns on here. Adrenaline goes crazy, and that's what happens. What we saw at the beginning of the book, which is about the time when I reset and I went and I understood why her eyes turned dark, why and who this person is. It's the daughter of Kwanon. Now, if I will sound redundant if you watched all my other reviews where this happens, I feel like the daughter and father, or the son and the mother, parents and child, that relationship, exploring that will never be as effective as the most epic time in history of storytelling. Vader telling Luke, no, I am your father. Nothing is going to top that. Everything else comes secondary, tertiary. There's a comic book story going on right now with a parent and a what's the word when you don't want to be gender specific? A child, yeah. There's that, a parent and a child, and I don't want to say who it is because I don't like spoiling other comic books in my X-Men review. But there's a story going on there which is so much better. I still want to call it out though for being not Vader and Luke. That's the pinnacle of story of the parentage. All right, so I'm redundant. I've said that before. If this is the first time you heard me say that, that's because that's how I feel about that, man. And it's always going to be secondary. Okay, that being said, there is a kid, and it's Psylocke's kid. Got the butterfly insignia on her. I am interested, right? So we get to the barn with all the kids over here. The person says that I'm Apoth and I'm the song, and this is just my speaker. And then the kid collapsed. So this is a tough customer we're dealing with. When X-23 talks to her about, yo, this is Cable, we just joined, Psylocke repeats what her master told her earlier on in the comic. It's, you guys are caterpillars, I'm going to turn you to a butterfly. And that's a great way to end it. That's great writing. The artwork in here, again, for the 13th time, was really good. Oh, the drug was called Overclock. So the white pages were actually useful here. And very straightforward. Nothing in here was too complicated for my brain. Nothing was Hickman. This was very, very... Oh, well, there was the part where I had to rewind back to look at other pages. But for the most part, this was structured and straightforward. And I appreciate that about this comic. So shout out to the writer. This is worth picking up. Like I said, all 6 of these titles over here are worth getting. And we're living in a great time where every Wednesday, yeah, we don't got a movie, okay? We don't got a lot of things happening in Marvel. We don't got a movie until freaking May. There's no X-Men movie until 2023 or the FF, and it looks like Iron Man's gone. But the X-Men comic books have been revived to the fullest. Guys, bye.